Estamos con Javier Milei.
Here we are with Javier Milei, the outsider candidate for Libertad Avanza, who won Argentina's primary election this Sunday, August 13th. Javier, thank you for joining us at Bloomberg. We wanted to ask you first on what most raises doubts among investors, which is the dollarization plan. How fast do you think it can be implemented? How is it going to work in practice? And how will you get the Congress approval?
I think there's a previous discussion about dollarization. Actually, strictly speaking, is to get rid of the central bank. The dollarization is an instrumental issue at the end of the day. There are four argumentative axes. One has to do with a moral issue, which is that stealing is wrong, and seigniorage is nothing more or less than a swindle by politicians against good people. Therefore, let's say if we consider that stealing is wrong, one of the greatest thieves in the history of mankind is the central bank. The second point has to do with a technical issue, because in the Argentine case, it is more evident when a product has no demand, its price is zero. So if the local currency has no demand and its price should be zero, the equilibrium real balances are zero. Whatever amount of money a central bank wishes to impose, the counterpoint is that the price level is infinite. Demand and its price should be zero. Equilibrium real balances are zero. Whatever amount of money a central bank wants to impose, the flip side is that the price level has infinity. So, in other words, it is a naturally inflationary economy. Then there are instrumental issues related with the different models of dollarization. There is probably the most iconic proposal, which is the proposal of Emilio Ocampo and Nicholas Kaczynowski, and we have different versions to dollarize. So it's not a technical problem. There's also a political dimension that has to do with the fact that Argentine politicians, by means of seigniorage, steal 5 points of the GDP from the Argentine people. Probably that's the greatest resistance of those thieves who want to keep stealing from the good Argentines. That is the general framework. Then there are issues which can be discussed in terms of the implementation and how much time it would take. See how Ecuador did it in a compulsive manner. It was attempted to be done in 3 months. It was not possible. Then they tried to do it in 6 months. It was not possible either. Finally, it was done in 9 months because there is an operational issue regarding the exchange of bills. The largest bill in Argentina buys less than $3, and in the case of El Salvador, people were free to exchange colones for dollars. This process ended up taking 24 months. Our plan is based on an intermediate option in which basically people will do it as in Salvador. But then, when 2/3 of the monetary base is converted, it will be automatically dollarized. Therefore, the time will be determined by the people. It will be the time it takes to convert 2/3 of the base, and after that, basically, it'll be dollarized.
So you win, you take office on December 10th, you present a bill to the Congress to dollarize, or, well, this plan of competitive currencies. How will you finance the withdrawal of those 2/3 of the monetary base?
Let's see. To withdraw to finance, you have to redeem the central bank's balance sheet. It's $40 billion, $10 billion for the monetary base, and $30 billion for LELIQs. Then you have reserves, let's say gold reserves, the SEDESA fund, the Basel fund, and the SDRs, which are around $10 billion. So to withdraw it, you don't have a problem. And to withdraw the LELIQs, you have government securities for the equivalent of $120 billion or $110 billion. So by trading 1/3, you would be able to redeem the LELIQs without any trouble. Then you have some sophisticated tools to make that rescue. But the truth is that even in the most basic case, where you exchange those securities for new ones under New York law, the day you dollarize, the economy eliminates the currency risk. It also becomes a credible stabilization program. Therefore, it ends up being expansive by lowering the currency and counterparty risk. Also, all this leads to less interest rate risk. Therefore, those government securities are going to have a huge rally, and you're going to get a huge capital gain. So it is a phenomenal business that very few will want to miss. Suppose that it happens as in El Salvador. It will take us 9 months. In 9 months, you had a return that could range between 100% and 200% per year.
What would you do if the Congress says no?
I will plebiscite it.
And move forward?
No, I'll leave it to the will of the people so that the Congress can explain them why it does not want them to choose which currency to have.
And what would you do with the central bank? Would you eliminate it? At one point, you made the joke you were going to set it on fire.
Well, I'm talking about the layout, what needs to be done with that building. It's a figure, it's a metaphor. I'm referring to the fact that it no longer exists. Regarding the transition, until we manage to transform the banking system into a free banking system, the function of regulating the banks will have to be fulfilled. The financial entity will continue to operate until a free banking system is in place.
And continuing with that idea, if you become president in 6, 10 months, 1 year, all the bills in circulation in Argentina would be dollars?
All dollars, yes.
So what would you do about the bonds? Because you were saying, well, those bonds are going to skyrocket in price. That ensures that there is no failure.
Well, it actually improves your credit risk because now you're going to have much lower interest rates. Also, since there will be an expansion, fiscal numbers improve. We're promoting a reform that has as a counterpart a strong reduction in public spending and a strong improvement in fiscal numbers. Think that with a 5% adjustment, you would have zero financial deficit, which would ensure the repayment of the debt, the sustainability of the debt, and we're thinking of making an adjustment of 13 points of the GDP. Therefore, we would be in a position, in addition to being solvent, to pay the debt.
Today the bonds are 27 cents, some of them 30 cents lower. According to this plan, are they undervalued?
No, I'm not saying that they're undervalued. With governments with people either with political leaders like those of Unión por la Patria, or from Frente de Todos, or from the Kirchnerists, or people from Juntos por el Cambio, let's say, I do not know if they're poorly valuated. It is clear to me that they are very cheap, and if we win, we want to make a serious fiscal adjustment.
Let me ask you about the crime problem, because it is a very important issue in the campaign in Argentina, but also in some other Latin American countries. What is your plan?
To begin with, the area of security and defense will be under the supervision of Victoria Villarroel. She's the specialist in these matters. The most important problems in Argentina, either in the economy or in terms of inflation and growth or insecurity, she will have direct influence over two ministries, the Ministry of Internal Security and the Ministry of National Defense. What we are promoting there is to change the way of looking at the problems. There is a new doctrine in terms of security, which is that he who does it pays for it. What is called here Zaffaronism, which reverses the position and considers that the victim is the victimizer and vice versa is over. For us, the victim is the victim, and the victimizer has to pay. Criminals pay the penalties for what they do. That implies a reform of the internal security system or a reform of the national defense law, the intelligence law, the law that has to do with the penal code, and what has to do with the prison system, in such a way that whoever does it actually pays for it. And in this context, let's say, there is also a re-evaluation of the forces as agents that preserve order in the economy.
I want to ask you about the October 22nd election. You got 30%, the two coalitions are behind you. What is the strategy to reach the 40% or to win in the first round or go to the ballotage on November 19th?
The first step is to improve our auditing process. Even though we were able to recruit 80,000 prosecutors in record time, which we do via social networks. I mean, we recruited more, but we were able to recruit 80,000. At this moment, they do not want to open the ballot boxes because there are, for example, places where we have 0 votes. That's weird.
Did you denounce it to the commission?
Yes, we did. We're denouncing all of this. For example, how do they steal ballots? Or for example, how come kids are finding our ballots hidden in their schools? Maybe people from Juntos por el Cambio party, as well as Kirchnerists, participated actively in that. I mean, there's no difference between them. In fact, there were Zooms of people from Juntos por el Cambio inducing their prosecutors to steal our ballots. So by not having the chance to vote for us, they would vote for them. Then the estimate is that around 5 points have been stolen from us. So we'd be pretty close to winning. And regarding the issue of convincing people who didn't vote, we have the power to persuade them because they are the ones who are disappointed in the establishment and the status quo. And we're the ones who best represent the opposition to the establishment and the status quo, because deep down on the other side, there are socialists with bad manners or good manners. But there are all socialists who are impoverishing the country, and they're the same from 40 years ago. They've been leading Argentina for years, and it's getting poorer by the minute. In fact, in 2001, there were 2 and none left. They are the same from then, plus they've multiplied. So that's why we say that a different Argentina is impossible if things continue the same as always. And we're here to change that.
You are going to focus on the province of Buenos Aires, the federal capital.
In the province of Buenos Aires, we're evidently going to work hard because we believe that we're in a position to defeat Kirchnerism.
Let me ask you now about the international affairs. What are going to be the angles there?
Our fundamental angles are free trade, peace, freedom, and aligning ourselves to the West, where our top references are the United States and Israel.
And what about China? It's one of the main trading partners.
It might be a business partner with the private sector. However, we do not make pacts with communists.
So what would you do? In other words, would you stop Argentina's relations with China?
I would not promote relations with communists, whether it's Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, Nicaragua, or China.
In other words, for Venezuela, are you going to change the policy?
Obviously.
And what about Brazil? It's the country's most important trade partner. You've spoken harshly about Lula in the past. Can you have a closer relationship?
No.
What do you mean? You don't think so?
In fact, I believe that Mercosur must be eliminated because it is a defectuous customs union that harms good Argentines. In other words, it's basically a trade managed by states to favor a specific class of businessmen. So that doesn't promote trade. It destroys trade. That generates trade diversion. It isn't good. It generates income for friends of the power class. It's truly horrible.
But in the world, there are a lot of bilateral and commercial treaties. It's good for the private sector.
No, it's good for those who are associated with governments in managing that trade. It's not good for the people. What's good for the people is for trade to be free, and it's not. When the state gets involved, it does harm. In fact, Mercosur works that way in Argentina. It generates a trade diversion. If it generates trade diversion, it generates harm. And who gets the benefits? Politicians who steal and favored businessmen. Then the question is, why do you want there to be a favored businessman and thieves at the expense of good citizens?
It's been said that you admire Donald Trump. Is that true?
I respect and admire all those who have managed to stand up against international socialism.
And regarding the fiscal reform that you plan for the state, you've talked about 13 GDP points. Where are you going to cut, and what are you going to privatize?
Our program goal is 15 points. It is a state reform where the public spending is lowered, taxes are lowered, and progress is made in a set of reforms that deregulate the economy. We plan to cut public works, bring it to a private initiative system, the Chilean way. We plan to cut discretionary transfers to zero and to eliminate economic subsidies, thus recalibrating the economic financial equation of the contracts to minimize the impact on prices. That gives you 13 GDP points. But we also want to advance in the privatization of public companies, and that's 1 GDP point. And we want to advance in the elimination of privileged regimes, which is another GDP point. So basically, let's say that's where we plan to chainsaw public spending. And on the other hand, we're also thinking about modernizing the labor market with an unemployment insurance system. And once we are competitive at a fiscal and labor level, we can have a unilateral opening process.
One last question about commodities, the agricultural sector, which is the main engine for Argentina's economy. What are the plans for that, for oil and gas, and for the lithium sector?
When we advance in a monetary reform that abolishes the existence of the central bank, the stocks disappear, the spreads disappear. What punishes the sector the most in Argentina is the spread, where you put 200 in and then you have 100 left. Therefore, the FX unification itself is a great driver mechanism of international trade. Plus, we believe that withholdings should not exist.
And what about YPF?
It has to be privatized. The thing is that during the transition, we needed together with ENARSA to finish adjusting the imbalances in the energy sector.
Javier Milei, thank you very much.
Thank you.